So with that, welcome everyone to AutoCAD versus AutoCAD LT with our IMAGINiT AutoCAD specialist, Ryan Wunderlich. Ryan, the floor is yours.
All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go through and we're going to cover the differences, the primary differences between AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. So this will be a fairly easy one. Let's get me here. Come on, there we go. So welcome to AutoCAD versus AutoCAD LT webcast. Note that all of you are muted throughout the call. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A. Again, as Lori went over, the chat panel is for general chat. The Q&A section is definitely the questions, and we will be monitoring that throughout the entire session. So just to give you a quick rundown, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan Wunderlich. I have 35 years of experience in AutoCAD across multiple industry segments. I'm currently a senior support specialist here at IMAGINiT. I've taught AutoCAD as a certified instructor, and I still teach today. AutoCAD, Civil 3D, InfraWorks, Revit, just kind of a mixed bag of miscellany Autodesk programs. I was a CAD manager for over 15 years doing CAD management. I spent 8.5 years in cruise ship building. I've done 5 years support for civil survey, landscape architecture, and I've worked in mechanical design, electromechanical design, printed circuit board and schematics, architectural, acoustic, as well as doing equipment layouts in industrial spaces. And just, I have a bachelor's in business management and a master's in organizational management. So what we're going to be covering today is AutoCAD versus AutoCAD LT. We're going to talk about the main differences between the two. We're going to talk about what both programs can do, and then we're going to talk about specifically what AutoCAD LT cannot do that AutoCAD can. So just so that we have everything on the table, first off, AutoCAD LT is AutoCAD. However, some of the functions are limited or not available because the LT stands for lesser technology. So what I refer to AutoCAD LT as this is the stripped down version of AutoCAD. If you want full AutoCAD, go full AutoCAD. It has more capabilities. If you're looking for a simple 2D platform to do manual drafting, AutoCAD LT will service that absolutely. So here's the main differences between AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. So AutoCAD is on the left and AutoCAD LT is on the right. So you can use AutoCAD for 2D drafting, drawings, and documentation. You can also use AutoCAD LT for that. The big thing is that AutoCAD has the capability of doing full 3D modeling and visualization. AutoCAD LT lacks that. So what it does, both can create and edit 2D geometry, both can annotate drawings with text, dimensions, leaders, and tables. You can customize the ribbon and tool palettes. You can attach and import data from PDF files. You can share and use data from DGN files, which are MicroStation files. DGN is the MicroStation format, and Bing maps. So again, in one of the previous webinars, I covered how to use the geolocate function so that you can actually bring in aerial maps into your projects. Now, the big difference is here is that in AutoCAD, you can create and edit 3D models with solids, surfaces, and mesh objects. You can share and use data from Navisworks that you cannot do in AutoCAD LT. The big difference here is that you can customize AutoCAD with add-on applications, APIs, Lisp routines, and Visual Basic applications. You can extract object data to tables. So in other words, you can extract object data inside of basic AutoCAD. You can create spreadsheets that are tied back to that information. You can put tables inside your drawing. The other thing that you can do in regular AutoCAD is you can apply and monitor CAD standards. So if you have CAD standards enforced, you can actually monitor that information. And then last, you have access to the Express tools. Express tools are not included in AutoCAD LT. They are part of basic AutoCAD. So now we're going to just go through and look at the user interface here. So what I'm going to be showing you is the differences in the user interface. AutoCAD will be always on top. AutoCAD LT will always be below. So in the Home tab, the only thing difference in the Home tab between the two programs is you have a base view in AutoCAD where you don't have that in AutoCAD LT. You have parametric modeling. So you have some parametric information in AutoCAD LT. Basically, it's to delete the constraints or hide or show them. But you can actually do parametric modeling inside full AutoCAD. In the View tab, the big thing difference here is that inside of basic AutoCAD, you have the View Cube, which gives you your 3D navigation. You do not have that 3D navigation in AutoCAD LT because it's not native. However, I can actually show you how we do this. You can get some of the 3D views in AutoCAD LT so that you can see some information. So just bear with me. We'll get through this. We'll show you the differences here. AutoCAD in the Manage tab. So you have an action recorder in AutoCAD that you don't have in AutoCAD LT. So you can actually record actions and play them back. You also see here you have the applications. This is where you can load applications, Visual Basic, Visual Lisp, run VBA macro. Those are all those customized API pieces here. And then you have your CAD standards with your layer translator where you can check and you can configure CAD standards. And then the tabs that only AutoCAD has. So you will see if you installed AutoCAD out of the box, you will have the add-ins, Express tools, and the featured apps. Those will never appear in AutoCAD LT because AutoCAD LT does not support those. So what both programs do really well, they allow you to create 2D drawings. Both programs are phenomenally good at creating 2D drawings. They allow you to annotate, measure, dimension, add text, plot or publish your drawings to a plotter or PDF. You can customize your environment's toolbars, ribbon, user interface, and settings. You know, the big thing is AutoCAD LT is still AutoCAD. Some functions are limited or simply not available. And you can do some limited 3D drafting in AutoCAD LT, but no advanced 3D capabilities. Can everybody else hear me? I have two people that are showing that they cannot hear me. So the other thing too that AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT both do is that you guys can actually download and install the Autodesk object enablers so that you can see specialized content from any of the verticals like civil 3D, mechanical, architecture, plant 3D, etc. And I'll give you a demonstration on that. So what AutoCAD can do, does AutoCAD LT work with raster design? It does not. So Robert, raster design is an add-on, so that constitutes a third-party API, and it's basically an add-on program, so AutoCAD LT does not have the capabilities of running raster design. So what AutoCAD can do that AutoCAD LT cannot, you can create and edit 3D models with solids, surfaces, mesh objects. You have access to the parametric modeling tools. Those are the things that I showed you. Where you had the differences where you could add parametric constraints and things like that. You can share and use data from Navisworks. You can customize with add-on applications, APIs, which is the application program interface, Lisp and VBA. You can extract those objects to tables. And again, I covered the extraction, the data extraction, I think 3 webinars ago with the tips and tricks. You can apply and monitor CAD standards. You have access to the Express tools, the action recorder. The big thing is you can apply visual styles and materials and render models and scenes inside AutoCAD that you cannot do in AutoCAD LT. And you have access to the navigation cube in the 3D orbit and ease of accessing 3D views inside of AutoCAD that, again, AutoCAD LT cannot do. So I'm going to give you here just a quick side-by-side demonstration of both programs. This will be pretty easy. So in here, I'm in basic AutoCAD. You're going to see this is just a standard flat 2D drawing. The big thing here is to notice that we have our view cube right here. Okay, if I switch over to AutoCAD LT, you will see that there is no view cube up here. Okay, so when we go back to AutoCAD, you'll see that I can quickly navigate 3D views. Here's my Southwest isometric. Here's a front view. You'll see everything is here, right? We can go to top. You'll also see that I have this information so I can control my views directly from here. And I can also change between, I can click on top and I can switch between parallel and perspective views. You'll also see that I have the ability to access this information right here, which is my visual styles control. So if you've ever seen or played with these, if you want something to look hand-drawn, you come up here and you change this to sketchy, and then when I come in here, everything looks like it was hand sketched. Okay, I can go back to my standard 2D wireframe, everything goes back to normal. Again, if I go into my AutoCAD LT over here, you're gonna see that I don't have any of that information up here. I don't have a view cube. I can still get to my 3D views like the Southwest Isometric. I have to go to View. I have to click on Unnamed Views, and I can go to Southwest Isometric here. So, like I said, you can do some limited 3D stuff here in AutoCAD LT, but it's going to be more difficult. So with that said, we're going to come in here and we're going to look at this 3D object. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over to Southwest Isometric, and you're going to see I'm in wireframe. The big thing is here is if I change this to realistic, you'll see I've applied a material to both of these. Okay, when I flip over to the same drawing here, and I change this to the same Southwest Isometric, so now I'm back in AutoCAD LT world, you will see that I do not see those visual styles and I cannot turn on those visual styles. You will also see the other big change here is because this is a 3D object, this is the box, and this is a cone. If I click on the box, I have a single grip to just move. When I go back to AutoCAD and I click on the grip, you'll see that I have the complete set of grips. So again, limited 3D. I can tell you, you can do some 3D in AutoCAD LT, but it's very limited, right? So if I draw a 3D polyline, you know, just a simple 3D polyline, I can go from this point here to this point here. And if I look at this in the front view, you're going to see that that is a true 3D polyline. And guess what I can do here? I can do the exact same thing, 3D poly, because 3D polyline is still accepted. I can grab that endpoint, I can grab that endpoint, I can come up to my front view right here, and it will draw that same 3D line. So again, limited 3D capability. So understand that you have some, but it is not going to be what you are expecting like you have in full AutoCAD. So one of the other things we're going to talk about here is some of the object enablers. So I have AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT 2021 installed, and I have both the Civil 3D object enabler and some other object enablers. So what you're going to see here in full AutoCAD, right? I'm back in full AutoCAD. I can come in here and I can click on this alignment. And if I check on the properties here, right? I click on this information here, you're going to see that it shows that these are AEC alignments. And again, these are the things that you would typically expect to see inside of an object enabler, which is I can click on the object, says AEC alignment, and I get no grips. So I can't modify this information, but I can display it correctly because this is a Civil 3D drawing and I'm in plain AutoCAD with a Civil 3D object enabler. So I can't manipulate this data, but I can certainly take a look at it and view it correctly. For these tables, I can still move the tables, right? The contours here all show up as a single entity, right? I can click on a contour label here and you're going to see that I have the ability to change where that contour label is. Again, simple Civil 3D objects. I can actually come back into AutoCAD LT. So now I'm down in LT because again, no view cube, no visual styles up here. And you'll notice that with that object enabler, I can click on this and I can do the exact same thing inside of AutoCAD LT. So there are some objects I can manipulate and some I cannot inside of AutoCAD with the object enabler. So you can still see all of the functionality and still do everything that you are looking for in AutoCAD LT as far as be able to view the drawings, and you have the same editing capability. Can a drawing with a raster image attached as a hybrid still be viewed in LT? Yes, because AutoCAD LT, I can go to XR for XREF. I'll bring up my XREF dialog here, and you will see that I have the ability to attach a drawing, an image, a DWF, a DGN, and a PDF. So if I want to attach an image, brings up my image dialog here, and I am hoping that maybe I might actually have an image we can just stick in here real quick. All right, pictures. All right, we'll just go ahead and stick this one in here. And why does that say unreferenced? I should have the ability to do this. All right, let's go back here. Let's go copy. Let's go stick this in my webinar drive. There. All right, C++, we're going to specify that on screen. I can stick it right here. I can scale it up. And this is an image attached as an XREF. Works in LT just fine. I can attach other things, like I can attach a PDF if I have a PDF with a sheet in it. And I'm pretty sure I do not have one real handy, so we'll just come in here and grab one real quick. All right, I'm just going to grab a simple page here. All right, and we're going to do full path, specify this on screen. All right, and there's my first page of my PDF. And it's the exact same process for full AutoCAD as it is for AutoCAD LT. The other thing I can do is if I wanted to bring something in here, so right, we can go ahead and right mouse click and I can detach this. I can right mouse click and I can detach this just like we've always done. If I'm in full AutoCAD LT, one of the things that you can do when I go to insert is you can PDF import. I can import a PDF here. And if it's a vector-based PDF, I can turn that immediately into CAD geometry. Again, this is AutoCAD LT. You can do the same thing in both programs, and it's actually a pretty good function. This was something we'd asked for years. We finally got it about 3 years ago, and it's finally getting better and better each time. And then the last thing we're going to look at here is an MEP duct. So this was ducting that was created in AutoCAD MEP, and you'll see again, if I come open my properties dialog box, you're going to see that it's an AEC duct. So I have no grips to move it. I really can't do anything to it, but I can display it properly. Otherwise, you would just see a simple square. And this is in full 3D view. So if this had an elevation, right, we go to the front view, go to our view, we'll go to front, right? It's just straight up front. And I can do the exact same thing at any point in time, even with plain AutoCAD. I can look at the same piece of information here in plain AutoCAD. So again, I'm back in plain AutoCAD. I have a view cube. I can click on front here. So there's not a lot of difference, but those little differences between the two programs is what makes all the difference in the world. So those of you that have seen some of my other stuff, I have other things that we can do. So for example, I can go AP for app load, and I can load and run additional applications here. So if I have Lisp routines that I want to run, I can actually run them from here. The other big thing too that you're going to see is that you have different workspaces. So if I come into my plain AutoCAD and I come down to my workspace, you're going to see that I have my drafting and annotation, and I have a complete set of tools for doing 3D basic, 3D modeling. And of course, as I always do with every version of AutoCAD I get, I put the classic interface back in because this is what I prefer, right? Those of you that haven't seen this before, or those of you that remember longingly for those days, classic interface comes right back in. And believe it or not, we can do the exact same thing in AutoCAD LT. So we can come into LT. You'll see that my AutoCAD LT only has drafting and annotation, but we can go through the process of creating a classic interface and turning the classic interface back on in LT. So again, we have that information, but what we don't have is I can't go app load, and you'll see it says unknown command. So I can't load any additional Lisp routines, things like that. So one small caveat to that, one of the things that you can do in both programs is called creating a script. So you can create an SCR file, which is nothing more than walking through the command line and doing each command and inputting each piece so that you create what's called a script. You load the script in LT, it'll go through, and it will go through line by line and pretend just like you're doing all those steps. AutoCAD LT does this, or AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT both still support scripts because it's very simple. It's nothing more than a notepad document with an SCR extension where you type in a command and then you put it, basically you hit enter. You hit enter again in order to actually do an enter. You put in some information, you hit enter twice, some information, enter twice, so on and so forth. I might be able to put that in a future webinar to talk about just some basic scripting, just for more or less the things that you might go through. But that is really, in a nutshell, the main differences between AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. Like I said, there's not a lot of them. They look very similar. Does AutoCAD LT have toolbar to insert wall or door objects? And can you show the annotation objects as well? Okay, so AutoCAD LT does not have a toolbar for inserting wall or door objects per se. Full AutoCAD architecture comes built in with all of those items automatically in there. Does AutoCAD LT have Vault Pro integration? Yes, AutoCAD LT does have the ability to run Vault Professional, not Vault Basic, but Vault Professional should be able to install, and you should have the Vault icons up here in order to log into Vault and retrieve drawings in AutoCAD LT. So getting back to the insert wall or door objects. So no, not natively. Even AutoCAD doesn't have that. So even if I go back to basic AutoCAD, right, we'll come back to basic AutoCAD right here. There is nothing in here I can insert. Whoops, let me go back to my ribbon interface right here. So if we come back into insert and I want to insert a block, you're going to see that I have some blocks already in this drawing, like, you know, doors, and I have some windows and things like that. But what you'll see is that I have blocks from library. So if you're planning on doing architectural type work and you want to use LT or AutoCAD, the first thing basic AutoCAD, the first thing you need to do is you need to have a block library that has those things in it. Otherwise, you're going to be drawing an outside and an inside wall, things like that. Tool palettes, dynamic blocks, and design center work the same in LT. Let me get back to that in just a moment. So as far as windows and door objects, you would need to either create or get those on your own from the manufacturers. So tool palettes, right? So if I come in here, right, Control-3 turns on my tool palettes. And again, I'm in full AutoCAD. You're going to see I have a door imperial. Let's switch back over here. Let me go back to our plan view. Right, here's our top view. And again, Control-3 to turn on the tool palettes. And guess what? They're exactly the same tool palettes. Dynamic blocks work exactly the same. So if I put an imperial tag in here, you're going to see when I click on it, I should have, well, that actually, right? So when I come in here, I should have all of the same functionality. Again, I'm in AutoCAD LT, and you're going to see I can flip the blocks over. I can do the rotation. I can do everything in AutoCAD with tool palettes, dynamic blocks. You want to see Design Center? Again, that's just DC, brings up Design Center. Looks and acts exactly the same as standard AutoCAD because this is a core AutoCAD component for both. Okay, so Design Center work, yes, all of those things work the same. Your annotation scales down here, again, all of these things work the same. I have the ability to change my annotation scales here, just exactly the same as you have in full AutoCAD. So can dynamic blocks be created in LT? So if I go BE to start my block editor, right? So let me just go ahead and click on an existing block because that will make it easier. We'll go into our block editor. I come in here to the callout bubble, right? The first thing I want you to see is that all of your dynamic information shows up here in the block editing palette. So you have your parameters, your actions, and your parameter sets. Okay, so dynamic blocks can be created in AutoCAD LT, no different than basic AutoCAD. All right, can you hide lines on 3D objects in AutoCAD LT? That is a $1 million question. And I believe the answer to that is no. Because again, you have no visual. So you don't have any visual styles to give you that hidden lines option. Can you load add-on programs in LT? No, again, that is one of the big differences between AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. You have no ability to put any third-party add-ons. The only things that you can add literally to AutoCAD LT would be Vault Professional interface and object enablers. That's it. You have no parametrics and dynamic blocks. That is correct. You do not have parametric values because you cannot do parametric modeling in AutoCAD LT versus full AutoCAD. Right, we come back here to full AutoCAD. We will insert the same thing. Right, a window, Imperial here. We click on this, we go back to our block editor. Right, the only thing that is different, it's not parametric modeling. The only thing that you don't have is constraints. These constraints are all parametric information. So these are the geometric constraints that you don't have access to in LT. Right, we'll go back to LT here real quick. We'll come back here. We'll go to block editor. We'll come back in here and you'll see I have parameter set, actions, and parameters. But again, I am missing the constraints because you don't have any of the parametric modeling information in AutoCAD LT. When I go to parametric, I can only show and turn on or off or erase here. Because I don't have that here, you would not be able to add that into your dynamic blocks. All right, in LT, how do you add a Z coordinate to the point at an end of a line? All right, that's a good one. All right, so we want to draw a line. So really, there's two ways of doing this. You can draw a line. You can draw your first line here. You can come in here. You can come in here, and you'll see that we have properties, and I can change my NZ here to 20. Start Z, right? And we want to change that to 20. Now, if I look at this from our front view, you're going to see that that is now 20 units high. The only other way of doing that would be to actually type out all the exact set of commands, right? So what I mean by that is we start a line here and we want to go at 20 in the direction of 0. Or you can also go from here, you can go to 2, 2, 2. Right, so if you're working in a grid situation, if I go to front, you're going to see that that line is at 2, 2, 2. So very limited 3D, it can be done. What other questions do you guys have? I mean, I know this isn't my usual webinar. This is just pretty straightforward on the differences between the two, but it's those differences that some people just don't quite understand or can't quite grasp. And so I wanted to be able to show that to you guys today. So could you build a wireframe 3D model and cover it with regions in AutoCAD LT? No. Well, you could probably cover it with regions. You could attempt to cover it with regions. Again, this is not meant to do 3D drafting, so you're going to run into some situations where things don't operate or work the same way you want. My suggestion is if you're planning on doing real 3D, go to full AutoCAD. Don't try and attempt it in AutoCAD LT because you're going to end up being frustrated. Let's see, is there any difference in plotting? Nope, plot engine is exactly the same, and that has not been different for a number of years. So, right, plot engine here, all of the same parameters here, as well as the as displayed normal. You can pick your plot styles. You can do everything in AutoCAD LT exactly the same. Okay, let's see. If you do a polyline, could you add elevation through properties? All right, let's talk about that. So when you're drawing a polyline, if I just do a standard P line, okay, this is a standard lightweight polyline. I can change the elevation of that polyline, right? Because I can have an elevation here. But one of the things I want you to be very specific about, or one of the things I want to be, is that a standard polyline here is not 3D capable other than changing the elevation. If you need a polyline that starts at one elevation and ends at another, you have to use the 3D polyline. And then yes, you can change those individually. So if I go 3D poly, right, we'll go and put 3 vertices in here. When I click on this, you're going to see vertex 1 has a vertex of Z. If I index up to vertex 2, I can actually change this to maybe value of 2. And then I can go to vertex 3, and I can change this to maybe value of 5. Right, did I change that one correctly? Let's go find the 0, 2, and 5. Right, so now when I look at this in front view, there's where I started at 0, I went to 2, and I went to elevation 5, but you have to do that in 3D using a 3D polyline. All right, how to install object enablers. That one is pretty straightforward. Let me just open up here. Right, so we open up Chrome. I'm opening up Chrome. You can open up whatever you want. Look for AutoCAD Object Enablers. All right, so here's the object enablers you have. So if you want the AutoCAD 2020, right, you can come in here. So there should be object enablers right here. So if you want Civil 3D object enablers, you go search for them. You download it here. Make sure that your program is closed, install it. Next time you open it, it will give you those Civil 3D objects. That's how you install object enablers. It's a very straightforward process. It's a separate download. It's not included in your software. At least for Civil 3D and Plant, your standard AutoCAD installs should already include the object enablers for architecture and the MEP components. How did you get that particular tool palette? All right, all I did here was I hit Control-3. These are my standard built-in tool palettes that come with the software. So this is your annotation. You have architecture with some basic architecture components, such as some windows, some imperial studs. You've got some basic mechanical stuff, shoulder screws, weld symbols, some basic electrical for schematic, basic civil, so like road sections, basic structural components, a wide flange I-beam, just a standard I-beam, moment connection, things like that. All of these are just standard right out of the box. My suggestion is that go through these, see if any of these work for you. If they do, great. If they don't, build your own. That's how I got that particular tool palette. Could you do a program like this with Inventor and Fusion 360? That would be a different group. But that would definitely be something, Lori, make a note of that to see if we can do generative design, Fusion 360, see if we can get a presentation for that. Is drawing compare in AutoCAD LT? Well, I'm in LT and you're gonna see right here under the view, I have DWG compare. I can do the same DWG compare that I can do in AutoCAD inside of AutoCAD LT. Okay, can we stretch a line into becoming a plane in LT? Nope, you cannot. You have no way to change that. You can change what Z elevation you're drafting on, but you can't really stretch a line to a plane. All right, is there any way to create express tools? Nope, sorry. is there a Revit LT that matches up with AutoCAD LT? So yes, there is Revit LT. The big difference between Revit LT and full Revit has to do with again, it's the same lesser technology. You don't have the ability to run some of the other, some add-ons and things like that. You lose some other, you can't do work sharing sets, and you can't create to BIM 360 collaborative. But other than that, Revit LT looks and acts and behaves very much like standard Revit. So exporting process to DGN format. That's a little more complicated, right? So we can come in here and I can export, and I can export here to DGN. When you go to export to DGN, that is a much more complicated process. You'll see that it just says V8 DGN, save. Should bring up a second dialog box here. So translate all of these references. So you have to know all of this information if you are working back and forth with someone with DGN. So you've got layers, you've got some line type information, line weights, colors. You've got a whole bunch of information in here that you need to be aware of. That really is that would be a completely separate webinar. I will make a note of that so that I can actually talk about this more comprehensively in the future. So thank you, Gary. Just know that this will come in the future. All right, what happens to items with aspects that are not supported in LT that were drawn in regular AutoCAD and saved in LT? Yes, those aspects are retained. So everything round trips. So even though in my drawing here, right, I have a material that I've applied to this, if I save this drawing in AutoCAD LT and I reopen this drawing in AutoCAD, that material will still be there. Everything round trips 100%. The only thing that it will not do is in my AutoCAD LT interface, it will not support me seeing that visual style or doing some of those editing operations, but it does round trip completely. Let's see. Janet, is it worth looking into? If you are looking at getting started with Revit, that might be a good place to go. Autodesk does have a comparison between Revit and Revit LT online. I suggest that you go take a look at that first. It's actually pretty good. Let's see. Yes, does LT allow you to insert PDFs and convert them into AutoCAD objects? Answer to that is yes, it works exactly the same as standard AutoCAD for inserting PDFs. The only thing you have to be aware of, Connor, is that if the PDFs are not vector-based PDFs, if they are raster-based, they will not insert other than create an image and attach as an image. Even full AutoCAD doesn't do that. Publishing is the same as regular AutoCAD, and you should be able to load markup sets and DWF files, yes. What is the easiest way to change the Z of all lines in an imported drawing? So Jonathan, I'm assuming what you're referring to is you want to go and flatten everything to an elevation of Z of 0. If you want to do something like that, my suggestion is to go to the Autodesk forums. There is someone who wrote a script that is kind of, for lack of a better term, it's a pretty big hammer to do what you want it to do. It's a script that basically moves everything to more or less infinity, moves it on the positive Z, moves everything infinity on a negative Z, and then throws everything back to a Z of 0. And that seems to work fairly good for that operation. It's a little script, definitely something to look into. I know that it's in the Autodesk forums. I've ran across it a few times. Does AutoCAD LT for Windows work similar to Mac? For the most part, yes. The interface is going to be slightly different, and some of the behavior patterns and some of the toolbars will be different, but more or less AutoCAD LT for Windows and AutoCAD LT for Mac work more or less identically. Are there any limitations regarding sheet sets between full AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT? There should be none. As far as there should be no difference because it's the exact same engine that's running both of those. Can you show how to export to MicroStation? That's the DGN file. Again, Gary, that's something I will mark down and we will discuss this in a future webinar. That's getting a little off topic here, but we can definitely come back and touch that at a future webinar. Let's see, can you install any landscape features or symbols? Well, you can pretty much do whatever you want if you draw it as a block. Like a landscape feature, you can get anything like that. Basically, what I talk to people about as a former CAD manager, one of the things that I really discuss with people is if you're going to enforce standards and you're going to be doing things like that, the first thing you need to do is you need to know what it is you want to accomplish. One of the things that I personally like to do anytime I've come into a job as a CAD manager is to set up a block library, make sure that all the blocks in that library are the ones that we normally use. Okay, once I've done that, then we talk about layers and things like that. But yes, as long as you have that block library, you can put those landscape features and symbols in. You've just got to draw them the first time manually, save it as a block, and then you can use it in the future all you want. Can you save to an older version? Yes, I can, right? I can go save as, and let's see what we can go back to. So you're going to see that we can go all the way back here to essentially a release 14 LT97 LT98 format. So we can go back that far when we save this drawing. Now, that being said, please understand that if you save back to a certain point, if you are using even full AutoCAD or AutoCAD LT, you do run the risk the further back you go of having certain pieces of data stripped out because they are not supported by that DWG format. Just be aware of that. I generally don't see that in the 2010 and up. I sometimes see that, especially when you go back to release 2000 or release 14. Okay. Can LT files be opened in standard AutoCAD? Yes, as a matter of fact, I have the files open in both, right? I have my AutoCAD, I created most of these files in AutoCAD LT, and I'm in currently AutoCAD LT, and I have the exact same set of drawings open up in AutoCAD. They round trip 100%. Is there an object enabler for AutoCAD 2021? There should be a Civil 3D object enabler for 2021 out there. Let's see, can you run through the, let's see, can you run through the extraction process? Jim, can you be a little more specific about which extraction process are you referring to? Are you talking about extracting the PDF information, or are you talking about extracting something else? Extraction of attributes to a table. Cannot do that in AutoCAD LT or extract them to a spreadsheet. That you have to do in full AutoCAD. I did cover data extraction. I believe that was my February webinar, and we'll show you where you can go retrieve that information. But I know I did that in the tips and tricks. I covered data extraction. So we will not be covering that here. Again, we're focused primarily on the differences between AutoCAD 2020 or AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT. But I did do a little brief walkthrough on data extraction. Tables work exactly, yep, tables work exactly the same. You see, I can come in here, I can go to home, I can draw a table, right? This should be the exact same table information here as in AutoCAD LT. Again, I'll come back to AutoCAD LT. We'll go back to my top view, right? I can come in here, back to home, back to draw a table. Now, the big thing here is that both of these tables work the same, and you will see that in AutoCAD LT, I can launch my data link manager to link to an Excel table. So this we can do in both programs. I cannot do data extraction in AutoCAD LT out to a spreadsheet, but we can create our data link here, right, from a data link. So we have to click on that. We have to create a new one, etc., so on and so forth. I can't run this right now because I don't have a good Excel spreadsheet to work from. Again, this would be something I can cover in a future one where you can, because there's a bunch of options in here, and this is really about a 10-minute process to talk about how you would want to do this correctly, because there's a couple of caveats that you'll run into, and every once in a while, if the preview doesn't show up here, you have something corrupted somewhere, and so you have to work through that. But more or less, you just come in here, instead of starting with an empty table, you create your data link and you walk through that process. It's a wizard, it's fairly straightforward. I will mark that down so we can include that in a future webinar to go through data link to an Excel table. Will it set up formats? Jim, it's a matter of what you want it to do. If you want it to carry your formatting over from your spreadsheet, you can have it do that. If you want to format it differently than what's in your Excel, you can choose that as well. You have an option when you go through that data extraction, or not data extraction, the data link import table from Excel. You have the option to use the Excel formatting, or you have the option to use the AutoCAD formatting. And again, that's something I would cover in a future webinar. Any other questions you guys have? All right, we'll give this another second or two, and then we will wrap it up if we don't see any other questions. Sign up for future webinars that we will cover. You go to our IMAGINiT website. I think it's imaginit.com, and I believe there is a tab at the top. Actually, let's go find out. Right.
I'm right here with you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, we go to imaginit.com. Right, this is our home page. We go to, I think it's under training.
It's under events at the top, just up at the top.
Oh, yeah,
P&L.
there it is. Events right here.
Yep.
Click on events. These are the upcoming events. So these are all events. If you just want to look at webinars, you can come here, right?
And if you if you go to select on the underneath, it'll take you, just bring me up a little bit. If you go into select, filter by industry.
Oh, yep.
And then under general design, that's just for AutoCAD.
Okay. Again,
and then while you're there, if you could just take them to the resource page, that would be great.
Yep. So in resources here, you go to the resource page, right? And I usually go to, all of my stuff, I believe, is under general design, right?
Or if you go to product, AutoCAD, it should just say product Ryan.
So. All right, so here you come in here, and this is where you can find a lot of things. Like I said, these are AutoCAD. So here was my last, this was my live online user group. I believe we should have some other videos in here and load more. There should be a tips and tricks from 2020. So here's this one, here's this one. One of these actually covers the data extraction. Okay. What do the options tab looks like? Okay, now that one I can handle. So honestly, the options tab are not significantly different between the two, right? You still have the same files and support path. The one thing that you don't see in AutoCAD LT here is you don't have trusted locations, because again, you can't run third-party apps and things like that. You have some minor differences, but all in all, most of this stuff is the same. The big one to be careful of is that under, I think it's under system right here, that you're missing a couple of things in here. But for the most part, these are more or less the same. You'll also see that you don't have the ability to come in here. You don't have profiles, no profiles, because you can't export an AutoCAD LT profile from one machine to bring it onto the other. However, if you set up your AutoCAD LT environment and you want to move that to another machine that's running the same year, come in. What you normally want to do is you want to come in here. You come down here to AutoCAD LT 2021, and you'll see that you have an import and an export settings right here. You could export your settings out of AutoCAD, or in this case, it would be AutoCAD LT. You can export those settings as a zip file. You can turn around and come in and import them onto the same version of AutoCAD LT on any other machine, and they will be identical machines at that point. That's what I generally recommend anyway, rather than just using strictly profiles. Let's see, jumped in late. What would be the two major differences that separate AutoCAD from AutoCAD LT? All right, Jimmy, sorry you're late. The main differences, and again, this webinar will be available for perusal later, so you can see that. But primarily the difference between the two is going to be third-party applications and 3D support. Can ArcGIS objects be imported, edited, exported back to ArcGIS? In plain AutoCAD or AutoCAD LT, no. You're going to have to go through at least Map 3D in order to do that, because Map 3D does support full ArcGIS connectivity, because you are not going to have access to any of the major data inside of plain AutoCAD. So you won't see any of the miscellaneous data that's usually tied back into the ArcGIS information. Trying to determine whether or not I want to learn Revit. What questions do I need to answer? I'm security systems designer, which is 2D. Well, Jim, that's really going to depend a lot on what you need to do and how much you want to spend. Revit does not have a lot of built-in stuff for security systems, so you're going to have to end up creating quite a bit of content on your own. In addition, one of the things you can have your individuals do, if you are working with a designer that's using Revit, you can have them export the floor plans or the ceiling plans out of Revit as just AutoCAD, and you can work off of those. That's really, you're in a specialized niche market, so understand that you're going to have some content that's not, that's going to have to be custom, and you're going to have to build it yourself. Building custom content in Revit, it can be painful depending on how far you want to take it. So that's just something to be aware of. You do have some basic stuff built into Revit, as far as you do have like electrical conduit runs and things like that. But as far as like security cameras, obviously you're going to be dealing with things like security cameras, motion sensors, door and window sensors, things like that. So if they offer families for that, that's going to help you. So what you're going to want to focus in is not so much as learning Revit. You're going to want to learn the, as what we call it, the Revit. You're going to want to deal more with the MEP side of Revit, where that deals primarily with mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And that's going to give you access to the electrical components, where you can tie those families into the electrical conduits, because you'll primarily be working off of ceiling plans and not so much floor plans. So that would, if you're very curious about that, my suggestion is if you have a sales rep here, give them a call, and you'll want to talk to someone. They will always do this for free, where you can have a one-on-one conversation. It's like a discovery call, where they can actually tell you whether or not that's going to be a good direction to go, and they can give you some ideas on where you need to go with that. You'll be talking to one of our application experts, as well as the salesperson, and they can kind of give you a, kind of steer you in the right direction. All right, and as usual, Lori, we are running out of time.
Sorry, I was double muted.
Yep, you're fine. I was gonna say we're running out of time, so let's get back to here. Right, and upcoming webinars. So I showed you how to get to the webinar page. We have an upcoming one here, which is AutoCAD and FM, which is facilities maintenance. That's scheduled for Wednesday, October 21st, and then we will have another tips and tricks, which is Thursday, December 10th. Our current offers right now that we have 30% off live online training classes until October 31st. Courses